This is going to be an exciting year, I can tell right now. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and before we address the minutes of the meeting, I'd like to make some introductions. First of all, I'd like to recognize one of our new city councilors, Michelle Flynn, who is here today just to see how we do business, and we'll try to be good today. And I also want to introduce our new member, but she's not quite there yet because of a glitch in the mailing of the notice, but approved at the first meeting. And welcome, and please have a seat. We'll be with you. The first meeting of the City Council in December, but somehow the letter that was sent by the clerk's office didn't make it to her home. So she's here just to audit, can't participate, or we're pretty open about participation, but in terms of votes, but hopefully by the time of our retreat in a month or 3 weeks, we'll have her as a full member. Wendy, why don't you, I don't know how many people you don't know, but just to be clear about it, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll go around the room and everybody can say.
Sure. My name is Wendy Clement. I've been living here in Portsmouth for 5 years, 5 or 6 years, but my business has been here for 35 years. I own Kennedy Gallery and Custom Framing. We did a major renovation project on Market Street as well. So that's my background. Thank you.
Looking forward to working with you. Why don't we start with you, Andrew?
Sure. I'm Andrew Ward. Been a resident for 20 years, coming up from Boston and before that, New York State, working in commercial real estate brokerage services with Colliers International in our Portsmouth office. We have 3 offices, 2 in New Hampshire and 1 in Maine. And happy to be here, working with this. This is a great group of folks here, so welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Wendy. Sean Clancy, Economic and Community Development, and coming around the bend to March, it'll be 4 years here with the city.
Sarah LaChance. I've been in Portsmouth. Andy, you're making me feel like I've been here since 2000. I grew up in York, so I've always been in the same Seacoast area. I work in technology from either technology companies or in financial services. I'm currently with TD Bank and responsible for our cybersecurity, governance, risk, and compliance organizations.
Tom Watson. We've known each other for about 20 years, but I'm retired, so I have nothing magical I can say about myself other than I love Portsmouth.
Good morning, Wendy. Karen Conard. We know each other. I'm in my 7th year, believe it or not, and I'm a frequent customer of your wonderful store.
Morning. Ben Van Camp. Wendy was a long-time Chamber Board member, so I've been Van Camp with the Chamber Collaborative. Been with the Chamber for 10 years now, and it's great to see you. Yeah, right?
10 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Ann Weidman, JSA Design, and the primary voice of Access Navigators. I've been working in Portsmouth for 20 years. I've lived here for 11. This is a great board to be on. So welcome.
Hi, Wendy. I'm Anna Howard. I joined the board, I think 3 years ago now. Not the board, commission. And I moved to Portsmouth 8 years ago from Massachusetts. And I work from home remotely for a company that doesn't have an office. I teach accounting and audit to the employees of CPA firms. So I have financial background.
Hi, Wendy. Bob Mahefka. I work in commercial real estate, and I've lived here since around '82. Been on the board for a while, like 10 years or something.
We stopped counting.
Sure, but for a while. But and prior to that, I was on the zoning board, so I've always liked being involved with the city and trying to help out a little bit and offer my opinion. And I think you'll do a great job, and we welcome you aboard.
Great. Thank you, folks. Okay, let's go with some business. You have in your packet of materials, the minutes of the December 5th meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Anna, do we hear a second?
Second.
By Andrew. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, so January is the month for the annual meeting of, annual election of chair and vice chair. And so we'll employ the usual procedure. I will open it for nominations of each office, and then we'll vote on that office before going to the next one. And so we'll start with the chair. I'll open the nomination and ask if there are any nominations for chair for the coming year.
I'd like to nominate Andrew Ward,
Okay,
position of chair.
okay. Do I hear a second?
Second?
And a second. Okay, so Andrew Ward is the first nominee. Are there any other nominations? Second call? Okay, then I will close the nominations for chair. And the bylaws provide that votes or elections are to occur by secret ballot unless the board agrees otherwise. I interpret that in relation to Robert's Rules of Orders that I can't simply declare the election by acclamation, but I can accept a motion to cast a single ballot by unanimous approval of the board and avoid having to hand out pieces of paper and collect them. Do I hear such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, by Bob. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, any objections to this procedure? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations. I'll open the nominations for vice chair and ask if there is a nomination for that position.
I'd like to nominate Sarah LaChance for vice chair.
Okay, Sarah, is there a second to that?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Second call. All right, I'll close the nominations for vice chair, and I would entertain a motion as we just had for the chair to cast a single ballot by unanimous approval.
So moved.
Second?
Sure.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. So congratulations, Sarah. So Mr. Ward, if you'd like to come over here, I will pass the gavel to you. And as we're doing that, let me just say thank you for you all for the last couple of years in which I've been chair. It's been fun. I'm ready to kick back a little bit, but it has been a good couple of years.
Thank you for
Thank you for your work, Tom.
This is the city gavel. This is the mayor's gavel.
Oh.
Don't take it home. I think this is the seat I used to sit in all the time before. I haven't gone very far, so.
Well, thanks everyone for the show of confidence and support in this. My background in the EDC is with bird dogging the group for an opening for 4 years, and there were several long-serving members at that time, so I'm happy to have an opportunity to give back in this way by serving in this role. I'm looking forward to continued collaboration with anyone. I'm really honored to work with Sarah as the vice chair. I feel like I'm already doing well in the category of being around and surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me. And my goal is to kind of keep up with the speed that everyone in the group is able to kind of take our floating ideas and as issues come up and bring them into a coherent thought, which is a real gift that Sarah has, and she's the fast synthesizer. With that, we can go on to Sean's report from the Office of Economic Development. Update.
Get it right here, Andy. Thank you. So good morning. It was quiet in December with the midweek holidays, but January has started off very quickly. I've shared with a few people, lots of meetings, but a couple of things I'm keeping an eye on. One is to let this group know, and I will forward a link after the meeting. The state of New Hampshire has created what they're calling New Hampshire Business Gateway, a one-stop website for anybody who's thinking about starting any kind of business in the state of New Hampshire. Ben knows they've been talking about this for a few years. It is launched, so I will send that out to you after the meeting. I've also been keeping track of what's going on at the Port of New Hampshire. They've put out an RFP to expand the terminal. We've heard about that over the years, but there's an actual RFP out. The goal is to increase the size of the terminal to attract different cargoes and potentially parlay that into creating some sort of separate passenger terminal versus having them bust across the cargo terminal. So more to come on that. We'll see how that plays out. I'm working to schedule a meeting with Chasen over at Pease, the airport operations, to get an update sometime in the month of January. He's agreed in concept to get together, so I'll see if I can pin him down. Next week I'll be attending the economic forecast by Brian Gottlob, who's the state economist, I believe. He gives a good update every year. That's in Dover next week, so I'll be able to report back on that. As you know, it's all things master plan. We're waiting for the vision to come back from the consultant, and then we have our role as the EDC, so more to come on that. A little closer to home, you know that our private developments continue full speed ahead, and we continue to, as the city, make sure we're not disrupting travel and business too much. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll see if the weather cooperates. And finally, if you don't know about the Congress Street city project, it is in full swing. They were connecting Vaughan Mall to Congress Street earlier this week. Hopefully they'll be in the street and not blocking sidewalks by next week. And I just want a shout out, I'm sure Ben will talk about it, but next Thursday is Local Love with our Congress Street construction. So if there's any way to get down there, come on down and be careful. And that's what I have, Andy.
All right, thank you. Before we move on to the presentation from Colliers, I also wanted to have a kind of a separate thank you to Tom and his service as past chair. I've really appreciated his legal attorney background and attention to detail, but also just keeping these meetings in really fine order and on time. It's funny watching Tom at the CET, our last meeting at the CET visit in Portsmouth, and how that meeting went over, and you could visibly see Tom wasn't comfortable with that meeting going into overtime, and I was next to him and got a kick out of it. But thank you for all your leadership and your mentorship and your guidance and support and behind the scenes phone calls, emails, communications that really make a group like this run really well. So special thank you to Tom on that. So with that, I'll move on to the presentation and discussion of commercial real estate in Portsmouth. We're really fortunate to have Abby Bachman, our managing director of the Colliers Portsmouth office, and also Christy Russell, who you'll recognize, the research director for both New Hampshire and Maine, so the state of New Hampshire and the state of Maine, and they're going to provide a state of the market presentation. We've budgeted about 20 minutes for that presentation, And then we budgeted some time afterwards for a Q&A around 10 minutes. Wanted to thank Abby and Christy for an early morning meeting presentation, and also the time spent in preparing the presentation. And hopefully we can transition this into asking you again for 2027.
Come on up.
You guys,
Take an
hey,
empty
Bob,
chair.
hey,
Come on
Bob,
up
can
and
you
join
swing
us.
over?
There's one over here.
Give those guys.
Great chair.
Thanks.
Thank you, boss. And ladies, I have your slides, so just let me know when you're.
Thank you, I forgot to bring a clicker today.
Give me your name. You wanna present for me?
Sure. Made the transition from David Choate. This is good.
Yeah, super fun. So yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Abby Bachman. I am the managing director for the Portsmouth office. Very recent. I'm sure you remember David Choate has historically been doing these presentations with our head of research, Christy. So I'm excited to keep the tradition going. So, and for those that don't know me, I see one new face. So I'm Christy Russell. I've been with Colliers for about 13 years now. As Andy said, I cover New Hampshire and Maine. And there's 6 submarkets in New Hampshire that we cover. I've mostly focused today on the Portsmouth submarket. And in the past, you guys have asked more for like the city of Portsmouth and Pease, so that is broken out in the presentation. Downtown is the one thing that's a little harder for us to cover. And as we go through, I'll explain our criteria just as a little reminder. It's been, I think November 2024 was the last time we were here, so it's been a little bit. One more slide. So as Christy mentioned, we break out our coverage into submarkets. So for the focus of this presentation is the Portsmouth submarket. Within that are 17 municipalities that we cover. There's a total of just roughly under 14 million square feet of industrial and, 4.5 million square feet of office. And the next slide is the criteria that we use when looking at properties. So the big thing, especially for downtown Portsmouth, that makes it hard for us to cover downtown specifically, is the buildings have to be over 10,000 square feet, and the majority of the use is what the property is. So for downtown, when you have the multifamily office and retail, it's hard to classify that in one of those categories. Office properties, industrial, we also did cover retail, but our focus at Colliers is mostly office and industrial, but we do retail and multifamily as well. So we did cover that today. Any of the government-owned buildings we don't cover because that's typically if they own the building, they occupy the building, it's never gonna hit vacancy typically. And medical space, we do not include in office or industrial. So we'll dive right into office. Our typical graph that we show, this is a 5-year look at the office vacancy. So trying to make this comparable, the blues are a little hard. The darkest blue is New Hampshire, so that's all 6 submarkets we cover: Nashua, Manchester, Concord, Portsmouth, and Dover. That's that average. The grayer blue is the Portsmouth submarket, which used to be below the average, is slightly higher than the state average. The city of Portsmouth is actually a little healthier than the Portsmouth submarket itself. Pease, on the other hand, throws everything off a little bit, which I know most people here know why. Our vacancy rate includes sublease, so it's slightly different than what other offices put out. So vacancy is direct vacancy and sublease vacancy. So if a tenant has their space for sublease, but they're not occupying it, it's included in this, which is just slightly different than other companies. So as you can see, in the past 5 years, our vacancy has jumped significantly. Pulling out my cheat sheet so I don't have to do the math in my head real quick. The Portsmouth submarket has climbed by 8.7% over the last 5 years. And the city of Portsmouth is only 3%, which is reassuring, sorry. Pease itself has jumped by 14%. It is a smaller market though, so the Pease square footage that we track is only 1 million square feet of office space. The city of Portsmouth is 3.3 million. So that's why some of these vacancies, the 14% seems super high, but square footage wise, it's not as high as it sounds. And then the Portsmouth submarket is, as Abby said, about 4.4 million square feet.
Can we ask questions as we go, or just
Yeah,
please?
that's fine. We like the conversation.
What's the breakdown of the P's 25% for the vacant sublease as opposed to just pure vacancy? Do you have that?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you after because I have it on my phone.
Okay.
And is Pease included in the city of Portsmouth, or are they
Yes.
completely, okay?
It's so it's kind of getting micro as we go. So it's the Portsmouth submarket, which includes Portsmouth and all of the below. Then you have the city of Portsmouth with Pease is included in the city. So it's anything in Portsmouth itself, not
If you
Newington.
were to like extract out Pease from the city of Portsmouth, the city of Portsmouth would look even better than it
Yes.
does right now.
Exactly. It's most of the vacancy we're seeing in Portsmouth is Pease office space.
Catch.
But overall, 2025 was fairly busy. There were, I mean, these are just a little snapshot of the notable sales. Cathartis bought, I'm sure many of you saw, the takedown of 53 Green Street. And their intention there is going to be called the Maris, 45 condos and just shy of 3,000 square feet of commercial space. The music hall purchased, why am I blanking on the address? Thank you, the Kearsarge House. They obviously put in
The members club. The members club.
yeah, the Members Club, which I'm a member of. It's phenomenal if you haven't been. Great pre-show, but they have been leasing out the vacancy in the office spaces upstairs since then. And then a local investor purchased the Portsmouth Sign North-South Construction Building off of 16 towards, I think, the end of the year. And both tenants are still in the building.
So one of the trends throughout New Hampshire we're seeing is a lot of office space, especially if it's, we'll say, Class C, which is what we consider 53 Green Street, being converted. So here, obviously, there's a ton of multifamily development right now in Portsmouth. Not all of it's office space. When you go to like Manchester, a lot of the Class C and also some of the towers are being converted. So it's just something, Portsmouth hasn't seen a complete shift where we're losing a ton of office inventory. Dover, on the other hand, we just lost a ton of with the Liberty campus gonna be converted. So it's gonna be interesting to see if, not that Dover has a lot of office inventory anyways, but now we might see more people coming back to Portsmouth because there's even less in Dover.
So when you say converted, you mean converted to housing?
Yes, yeah. Next slide, thank you.
And then just some notable leases. Phoenix Tailings, 100 Domain Drive, switched hands within the past 3 years, I believe, to Torrington Properties, and they've been working to fill the vacancy there. They recently leased 51,000 square feet, I believe it was last October. This is in addition to their existing Woburn, Mass location. This building is just it's primarily office with just a touch of flex space, but so we cover that within our office research piece. And then
Pause you real quick. And Phoenix is taking most of the flex space. It's not a lot of office space that they took. As Abby said, they opened in October. They did their lease in the first quarter of last year.
and as we all know, within Pease, Bottom Line Technologies had left around the pandemic. That building has historically been vacant. Cushman & Wakefield's been working to fill that. It's been I think it was a sublease to 2035, but Albany International relocated their headquarters from Rochester. I think it was third or fourth quarter that they signed that deal. And then E-Tech Group relocated just under 13,000 square feet, and not noted on this slide, there were a couple of other tenants that did move in to the Bottom Line Technology building, including Market Square Architects. They leased 9,000 square feet, and then Rearch Construction opened its first Seacoast location, which was 5,000 square feet. So it's great to see that was a really large vacancy for a long time, and there's been very good attraction to it within 2025 as a whole.
And there's still plenty.
That building is now, how leased up is,
I believe it's, I think it's like 20,000 still available, so it's still a good amount. And part of the problem for office vacancy is a lot of the tenants looking for space are small tenants. So these big blocks of space are getting chipped away slowly. So we're seeing vacancy slowly or level out. but it's just not absorbing large blocks quickly.
Landlords have had to be creative in how they break out the existing spaces to accommodate these smaller users, but that does fit into our trends. As Christy mentioned, the smaller flexible footprints are still very attractive, that 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. When those spaces tend to hit the market, they tend to go fairly quickly. If you see those in Pease, they're grabbed up within just a few months. And tenants are looking more and more for landlords to provide something a little bit more turnkey. They don't want to have to put in a lot of money into the spaces, especially for the smaller tenants that might not have that much capital to put in. What is really important is, on-site parking for people, and then there's the amenity drive with downtown Portsmouth. You have that walkability, you have the restaurants. And in a recent conference that I went to down in Boston, landlords are finally listening to their tenants versus just putting whatever it is they think makes sense. They're actually getting feedback. It's, I need a daycare, I need a gym, I need a dog wash station, like those types of things. So landlords are starting to actually understand what it is that tenants want going into their buildings. And we're seeing a lot of, not your typical standard office use that we saw pre-pandemic. We're seeing a lot of physical therapists. We're seeing a lot more medical go into these existing office spaces, which has been interesting.
And to Abby's point about the parking and the amenities, most companies are doing flight to quality. So if you're in maybe an older building that's a little outdated, people are trying to find, if they're gonna move, they need to upgrade their space. If it's amenities, just the quality of the space, getting more natural light. Throughout the state, we're seeing that people just wanna upgrade their space. The other part that, oh my God, I just blanked on my own thought. I'll come back to it later because I can't remember what I was gonna say. So switching over to the industrial market, which is a completely different category, and obviously New Hampshire is more of an industrial state. For the next slide, vacancy has jumped quite a bit, but it's not a bad thing. When I looked at this graph originally, and I'm like, oh, we went from 0 to 8.5%. That's insane, but a 0% vacancy is not healthy. It doesn't give anyone, and that's for Pease in particular, it didn't give anyone in Portsmouth the room to grow. They had to move outside of Portsmouth in order to grow. So it's a good thing that we have more vacancy. The other thing that's not on this graph is the amount of inventory we've added. So the Portsmouth submarket right now sits at, or is up by 0.9%, so just under 1% over the last 5 years. It's a good thing. The city of Portsmouth, so that includes Pease and everything in Portsmouth, it's up by 3.2% total inventory. So we've had new construction added. And then Pease itself is up 5.6% in 5 years. So, and that doesn't include Lonza's new facility that they're still building that isn't, to my understanding, occupied yet. So this is only things that are occupied. So 100 New Hampshire Ave is included in that, what was it, Galvion? Galvion, I believe, is how do you say the other one that went in the last 5 years? So again, it's a good thing. The only thing that Abby and I were talking about earlier today, the Pease vacancy is slightly misleading as some of those buildings are very unique and specialized, one being the brewery. The brewery that closed is one of the more recent spikes for Pease vacancy. And it could sit for a while just based on the very unique nature of that building. Merrimack, the same company has now closed their Merrimack facility this year, or is going to be closing it. So it's going to be another brewery canning line vacancy. The good thing in Merrimack, there's a Nashua company that has been expanding its canning, so maybe they'll move over, I don't know. So, but over the last 5 years for the vacancy, the submarket has gone up by 3%. So again, still healthy. Where we were before was 1.1%. Again, not a healthy vacancy. Now we're about 4%. And again, by healthy, I mean it's good for the tenants that they can expand and grow. I'm sure landlords don't like it because they can still charge a lot of money, but it's not as tight as it was. And that again includes Exeter, Epping, the outside of Portsmouth. The city of Portsmouth itself increased by 5.2%, which again includes Pease, which is part of it. And obviously you can see Pease went from 0 up to 8.5%.
Just touching on a couple of sales, what was it, 100 New Hampshire Avenue, the King Company had constructed and leased out that building to two very large high credit tenants and then flipped it to a local investor who has taken over. I'm not too familiar with the middle.
Can I just keep going on?
Yeah,
100 New
yeah.
Hampshire Ave, the new owner is actually meeting with an engineer too. Apparently that site is they are able to put potentially 80,000 square feet on that site as well. So we could see more new construction. Again, they purchased the ground lease, obviously because it's at Pease from the Kane Company. So we'll see if they move forward with that or if they wait for a tenant, which most investors or developers are waiting for a tenant before they just build. This building, as most people know, was built for a specific tenant that backed out of the deal, and then they were able to backfill it before it was actually completed.
And
which is
that's
nice.
and that's a trend that we're seeing is that people, like investors, they're only building if they have a tenant to backfill it. They're not looking to spend $200 a square foot and have a building sit vacant for 6 months, because what we're seeing is those larger blocks for a lease are sitting because there's a way more owner users in the market. They're not looking to spend 6 figures on rent if they can have their own building, and pay themselves back on it. So I'm sure if they're gonna be building 80,000 square feet, they're gonna have a tenant in mind before they start really, digging into the ground on that one.
And then the second one, the middle one, is actually a owner or a tenant in the building purchased their building. So that's Action Kids of Brentwood, or at Brentwood, that purchased their building that they've been in for quite a while.
And Bartlett Residential, if I remember correctly, they are putting housing
Yes.
in that lot.
So that's Iron House Properties that has been going through, I'm sure most people know here, a very long legal battle as well since I believe the plan started back in 2021. So that's gonna be 152 market rate apartments in 3 buildings. I did, after, again, reading up on some of these, because there's a lot of multifamily developments, I do love the public park aspect that they're putting in there that, according to what I read, they'll be giving their green space back to the city, and it's gonna be a public park, which I thought was a nice touch. And again, when we get to the multifamily size, you'll hear us say a lot is, it's what people want in order to attract. It's that high class amenities that people wanna go to.
And to my earlier point of larger blocks for industrial not being leased out as heavily as they used to, the only notable larger scale lease that happened actually in the fourth quarter of last year was at 111 New Hampshire Avenue. I reached out to the brokers and haven't gotten a response on confirmation on who leased that out.
So if anyone knows
you
here.
might know.
I think it's a company called Orbis.
Orbis?
Defense contractor. They work with the shipyard. That's what I heard.
We'll confirm that.
I'll say thank you.
And they're already on Pease, Orbis.
That's what I thought,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it,
So
yeah.
they were
It's an
looking for
expansion.
space. They received some DOD money to do some training.
Okay.
That makes sense.
There we go. But then the other two, I was surprised. I thought there were way more, bulk releases last year, but there weren't. They're under that 10,000 square feet, which is where we see a lot more activity in the market. Is like, under 15,000 square feet, there are a lot of users out there. So I think is it SoCal? I'm not even gonna. North America leased just around 10,000 square feet in Q1 in Epping. And then David and I actually helped put in Independent Electrical Supply Corp, 9,000 square feet. That is a Kane building. And they leased for, I believe, 5 years, if I remember correctly. But circling back to kind of the trends, construction costs are still high. Like I mentioned, investors are only building if they have a tenant in mind. However, there is a very strong owner user market versus just tenant market, as I just said. So if there's an owner user and there's land, we are seeing a fair amount of development for those, as well as development and contractor base. So you're 2,500 square feet, 4 in a row. Those tend to get leased up very quickly because there are a lot of small industrial users in the market. If it's HVAC, electrical, plumbing, what have you. And there's still a very strong demand for industrial across the board, across all submarkets. The spaces that you see sitting, the operationally inefficient in the trends, they're over 20,000 square feet. People much rather own than lease. They are outdated. They don't have the ceiling height that most users need. I mean, everyone these days needs very high ceilings. They have loading docks, but they don't have drive-in doors. There's a whole mix of things, but what I've seen is for those users that are looking to rent over 20,000 square feet, landlords are willing to invest back into their buildings if it's raising the ceiling heights, if it's adding a couple drive-in doors, because landlords kind of have to be a little bit creative so their spaces aren't sitting on the market for months on end.
And to Abby's point about the construction costs, we've even seen some owner users that had bought land in Dover in particular that were gonna build, have the plans to build, everything's ready to go, and they've now decided it's too expensive and actually moved to different areas. We have another company from Portsmouth that's actually gonna be moving out of Portsmouth to Fremont, still in the Portsmouth submarket, but they're gonna build now. But it did delay, so they're leasing longer, all this stuff. But, so it's a mix of owner users who are like, yep, we're gonna wait for the building that's available because it's gonna be cheaper to buy. Not always true, but construction costs are going up. JP Morgan just released, I think it was this week, that with the tariffs and all of other factors, construction costs has gone up 50% for steel, other metal, and just normal construction materials. So it's only gonna go a little higher, so it could be that owner users are still gonna be expanding if they can on site. It's a little hard, obviously, in Pease to expand. We are seeing that a little more outside of Portsmouth than in Portsmouth. And if owner users are just gonna wait as long as they can, or unfortunately move to different areas. The good thing is New Hampshire is still cheaper than Massachusetts, so we are seeing plenty of people coming from Mass to New Hampshire, which is a great thing. And that's not just Portsmouth, that's also Nashua. Not so much Salem, or I should say, definitely Salem too. So it's Nashua, Salem, and Portsmouth. We're seeing a lot of people come up to. And the retail market, so again, just keeping the criteria in mind. So this is buildings over 10,000 square feet. So the smaller downtown is not included in the city of Portsmouth. It's just, it is really hard to take out what's retail, what's office, what's multifamily. So that is why. So this is a smaller graph because I didn't include Pease for obvious reasons as well. So again, what's surprising from what you heard right after the pandemic is retail was in trouble. Retail clearly is not in trouble based on this graph. Retail seems to be the most adaptable right now. It's people looking for an experience more than the traditional going shopping. So a lot of like axe throwing, simulators, like that seems to be the more of a trend. The other thing that's also helping out is all the electrical car charging. You go to a shopping plaza usually to charge a car while you're on a road trip. I got the fun experience of doing that for the first time last weekend, going to New York City. But it was nice stopping at a retail plaza and be able to do something while you have to charge for an hour, which I didn't know. I didn't know that was a thing. So the other part for retail market, especially when you're looking at New Hampshire, is there has been a good amount of new inventory added. Some on the seacoast, a lot obviously down in Salem, New Hampshire, a little bit in Londonderry, and now Bedford. Those are the live, work, play developments that have happened, Tuscan being one of the bigger ones. So overall, focusing on the Portsmouth submarket, though, the inventory went up by 0.2%, or not the inventory. Yeah, the inventory went up by 0.2%, which is also the same for the city. So most of the retail construction is happening in the city of Portsmouth, which is nice. Some of it is more smaller blocks, so the retail plazas that are adding on, like the banks and the restaurants in front pad sites, that is included because that is part of one property. So it is slightly deceiving that it's not brand new. Overall, though, vacancy in the submarket of Portsmouth over the past 5 years went down by 1%. So that's great, depending on if you're a landlord or a tenant, I should say. And in the city of Portsmouth, in the past 5 years, it went up less than 0.5%. So again, very steady compared to office and industrial. It's more of a steady market.
Retail was crazy in 2025. Torrington Properties, as you probably know, purchased the Portsmouth Green from Waterstone Properties. And in that same breath, built up the Sage Portsmouth condos, where the former Cinemagic used to be. And not included on the slide, but still discussing Torrington. I'm sure you've all seen in the news, they bought Fox Run Mall in pieces, but this year becomes a year where they really start laying the groundwork for that and building in the tenants. The Kane Company and who was the other group? There was a second group, but they bought the Christmas tree shops. Obviously you've seen that no longer exists. It was very weird the other week when I drove by and I was like, oh wait, there's no longer buildings there. But they plan on putting what is, I believe, the largest scale development for multifamily, 360 units on that site.
Eastern Real Estate.
Thank you. But there's gonna be a lot of amenities. They're gonna be very amenity focused, fitness, that dog walking station that I mentioned, which I believe is actually in the Sage Apartments as well. And outdoor kitchens, yoga, so, they're the type of landlord that really listens to the tenants and the people that they're putting into their spaces. And then most recently, J Hospitality Group purchased Gallagher's Place over at 801 Islington Street. Which is great. I mean, he has street within that plaza, and then hopefully very soon, Nisi, a Mediterranean restaurant. So I'm excited to see that open. But even outside of the Portsmouth submarket, we saw a lot of investor interest in retail shopping centers, which I was surprised to see in 2025. But that's that income generating. They see that there's a strength in the retail market. And I think it's been proven, post-pandemic that, we were all surprised at how quickly retail did jump back. So I think they're seeing that as a long-term investment play, it makes sense. It's been tried out and it works.
And like for Torrington Properties, like Abby said, they bought it after they were already working on Sage, or bought the retail plaza part.
Yeah, the green.
So a lot of the retail is adding multifamily. The Fringe in Rochester potentially is adding some multifamily as well. So it's not the live, work, play, although if you work in retail, it is live, work, play. But having those amenities that are right next door, I was fortunate enough to move into an apartment in downtown Manchester that's the same thing. It has a courtyard in Manchester, which is kind of crazy, but also has those downtown amenities. The walkability, where you don't have to go out and have to drive somewhere, is a big thing. I'll say for even younger generations than me, because I am fortunately one of the oldest in my building, which is funny to say. It is a way of bringing a community together without having to leave your building. And that's definitely the trend, multifamily, seeing the Kane Company is kind of doing the same type of trend at 100 Durgan Lane as well.
And then just some leasing. Burlington Coat Factory actually expanded their presence over at, I think it's 1465 Woodbury Avenue. That 18,000 square feet had been vacant for quite some time. But then that was Q4 of last year. Live Freely Market, if any of you have gone, it's a really great experience. A bunch of, kind of markets, small retailing, really good Christmas shopping.
Yeah.
They leased 9,000 square feet at the Las Olas Plaza in Hampton. And then that was a former Rite Aid actually too, which there's a lot of those on the market, as we all know.
And most of the landlords are not looking to sell them, they're just trying to lease them out. A lot of investors purchase the Rite Aids for very high prices, so if they sold them, they would lose a lot of money right now, especially the Route 3 corridor, there's a lot that overpaid for it.
We have 3 in Portsmouth.
Yeah. So I'm and they are hard spaces to lease up. I'm working on one of the Salem, New Hampshire Rite Aids, and the range of people that are looking at it, restaurants, a school/daycare, batting cages. It's just everyone's trying to go there. Industrial used to be great for batting cages. I am very much a softball person, so that's why I focus on it as well. But industrial's so expensive now that it's actually cheaper for them to try to fit up a Rite Aid.
Yeah. And our office is bringing out the Rite Aid at Plaza 800, which is a little over 10,000 square feet. So if you know anybody. And then Chick-fil-A is leased out 5,700 square feet. In Seabrook, was it a Texas Roadhouse? Outback Steakhouse.
And they're not open yet. It's taken them quite a while to,
But we've all
Bring it up to their standard.
seen the amount of traffic at the Newington location, so I'm sure it'll do very well.
and with that lease, it will bring it up to 100% occupied.
So I touched on it a little bit earlier. There's a high investor interest in the retail market play. There is still a very strong interest in those smaller footprints and, you know, flexible layouts. Retail doesn't sit on the market very long. There is a very big trend in fitness users right now that I've seen. The second 3,000 square feet hits, you get inundated with reformers and treadmills and all those types of users.
The thing for the Rite Aids, if the owners are willing to subdivide them, they'll go much quicker. A lot of them are hard to subdivide based on how they're laid out, so.
The HVAC and everything else. It's very important for retailers to have that, you know, the quality of the location, the access, you know, being able, if people can walk to it, if people can drive to it, if it has that visibility, if it has that like Route 1 wow effect.
And a lot of medical are now going with the same thing. They rather be, instead of these standalone medical campuses, which a lot are still in them.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of them come to retail because they want to be like, oh, you're going to your doctor's appointment, and now you can just go shopping.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, we've seen a lot of that. And then, as always, retailers really like when landlords invest into their spaces. Because it is a lot of capital to put into retail. But I think now flipping over to multifamily.
Real quick, I know there's a lot in
There's a
multifamily, but
ton
you
of
guys know a lot.
development, a ton.
So vacancy rate, vacancy rate, this is again 5 years, pretty level minus the initial dip from 2021. One of the things that I think is gonna change over the next year, since we have, I think the Seacoast, online said 1,000 units coming to Portsmouth, is initially, obviously, we're gonna have a spike in vacancy when these are delivered, because it's gonna take time to fill them. I don't think any of them are gonna hit the market and be 100% occupied. It could happen, but it will just slowly, so you'll see a spike in the next year or so when they hit, and then it'll go down a little bit, but every time, since there's 1,000, it's gonna go up. And again, these are only apartments, so the condos are not included in this unless they're rentable condos. But that's still a little hard to track, so it's mostly the large multifamily over 5 units. It's not the 4 and duplexes, because again, that is not marketed in the same way, so it's a little hard to track. So we're below the state average in the Portsmouth submarket and the city of Portsmouth. Part of the statewide average spike is again new construction, especially in Manchester and Nashua. In Nashua, they have a lot of the private-public partnerships that have happened, and they're doing really well with it. The city of Manchester has had obviously a lot of conversions from office to multifamily, as well as some new construction as well. You don't have to go back on the slide, but in the submarket, over the past 5 years, the amount of units went up by 14%. And in the city of Portsmouth, it went up by almost 20%, just the number of units, which is why, again, even though we're that low, we went up quite a bit in the amount of inventory we had. Sorry. Oh, what happened to my
Yeah, I don't know where the
picture?
picture went. Just a couple sales. I truthfully don't do really anything in the multifamily market. But the market overall is still so strong, and for, you know, units 10 and under, there are not enough buyers out there. I mean, I know Andy can speak to anytime he gets a multifamily unit up, the amount of showings and interest is quite honestly very crazy. But these are just a couple. 2 in Hampton. Hampton actually is a pretty strong market for multifamily. There have been a fair amount of availabilities that have come up for sale. And then just one in downtown, 79 State Street, an 8 unit.
The interesting thing, 2 interesting things, is obviously this is a very wide range of 113 units to 8 units. But if you look at the sale price, obviously the newer ones on the left-hand side of the screen are a little more expensive per unit, $279. But then you're going to a 61 unit and an 8 unit, and it's still about $250 or $250,000 per unit. It is also regional. We have a lot of regional investor. It's not just New Hampshire investing in New Hampshire. It's a lot of regional, a lot of Massachusetts investors, big companies, as well as small people looking to get into the multifamily market. Portsmouth is very much a hard investor market to break into unless you can slightly
Some
overpay.
pricing, yeah.
And this I won't go into because this will take forever. I just tried to pull 6 of them, just kind of show the different what we're projects going on. Dave would be very happy that there's workforce housing listed on this, and I know that. So we will just say it and move on. I did put one of the condo projects because that's one we talked about earlier, an office building now being converted into condos. The Prescott Post is the retail, 100 Durgan Lane, the Christmas tree shop being now converted over. And I believe, Andy, you sold the 815 Lafayette, which used to be the radio station, that's now apartments. So again, a lot of it's conversion, which it has to be.
And Russell Street, we're all dealing with that traffic, and will be for the future. That's gonna be the 3-building, 80 unit on the former Sheridan parking lot. But multifamily, I mean, since the pandemic and even before that, there's been a sustained demand and very large investor interest. Ton of development, as we just spoke of, potentially 1,000 units coming. Affordability is still a conversation that we're all having, and it's, very important. And then that modern amenity preference of having the fitness studio, the dog wash station, the walkability, that's all very important. That was a lot, sorry.
So we were able to get a few questions in during the presentation, but I don't know if there's lingering questions from the commission that can be directed at either Christy or Abby.
How's Andy? I'm just wondering, in terms of business, businesses expanding into the area, what percentage do you think is people moving from out of the area here as opposed to organic growth?
You mean like a relocation from Massachusetts?
Yeah, or wherever.
I think it's a mix. We've seen a lot of companies in the Ports Seacoast market.
There's New Hampshire.
Yeah, mostly Seacoast market staying in the Seacoast, but then we have seen I'll say a big heavy handful coming from Massachusetts over. What we have not seen as much is like before COVID, we had a lot of people adding satellite offices. We haven't seen a lot of satellite offices pop back up in big square footages. We've seen a couple smaller ones. We've seen a couple companies, especially Maine and Manchester, or Portland and Manchester, add a third location that is a very small office space. What is interesting for me is I'm seeing more people go into small office spaces versus going into a co-work, a Regus type space. They actually want the footprint, they want their branding back out in the market. So that would be my answer. It's not a percentage though.
We don't track a certain percentage.
But it's a healthy mix. It's definitely still people coming in. The other trend, especially for office, is, and I think it's part of the satellite location conversation, some employees, not everybody, is missing that human connection and actually wanting to go back into the office. If you tell them it's 4 days a week, they're not happy about it, but they are wanting to go in 2 or 3. The other thing, and I haven't heard it so much on the Portsmouth side, but more Manchester, we have a lot of downsizing coming in Manchester, but it's also people that are just waiting for their leases to expire because now these people want to come back, so they don't want to start subleasing, lose their space, and not let their employees come back. So it's a happy mix of what companies are still trying to figure out to do, which is kind of crazy to say because now we're on year 6 after post-pandemic, but people are trying to figure out what to do still. I don't think it's clear yet, especially for New Hampshire with the satellites.
Tom?
My biggest takeaway this morning is really the vacancy rate out of Pease on every sector, and well, they don't have residential, but is this a temporary thing, or are the longer macro trends suggesting that this type of a standalone office park concept has become dated?
I think I'm gonna say it's still kind of temporary because people want to come to Portsmouth. Anyone that follows Mike Bergeron on LinkedIn, you are always seeing him saying the Massachusetts company is coming to Pease, the Massachusetts company is coming to Pease. Which is great to see. without insulting anyone over at Pease, the office space is a little outdated. If maybe some updates were done to the properties, it might attract a couple more.
There aren't that many amenities.
Exactly, the
They're hard to
biggest thing.
subdivide too.
Say again?
They're hard to subdivide too. Some of the big
Exactly.
office spaces, that's the challenge, is they're very hard to make into these smaller flexible spaces.
Hence the cost aspect. Even if you can do it, you can't justify it necessarily on the rents on the.
But a lot of people are going to Pease over downtown office space because of the parking. There are some other office parks outside of Pease that are doing well, that are a little more modern, updated, have more of like a coffee shop that's nearby so people can walk to it. But I think it is still temporary because we're slowly seeing, it was hard when there's a big block that gets left. And now again, 325 Corporate has a bunch of small tenants backfilling it, but it's gonna take a while. With Lonza being in Pease and them expanding, we have seen companies that work with them backfill some of the industrial space too. So I think it's just gonna be a slower, COVID was so quick, everyone filled space, and now it's just slower than it's back to typical. It just takes some time.
You mentioned that it takes some time, obviously, to fill a multi-family rental building. Any data on how fast West End Yards here filled up? 'Cause that
I
was
don't
about
have
200 and
I don't have that on me. I
Yeah.
can get that to you.
Okay.
More familiar with the building I'm in, that's now gonna be a year and a half old.
Okay.
They're at 98% filled.
Got it.
So it took a while, but once it started going, it was pretty quick.
Yeah, I'd say less than 12 months, so
Yeah.
think about the pace, you know, pretty healthy.
So I have questions, particularly around, a number of people come to me expressing concern about the redevelopment of the mall. And if you look at the latest conceptual drawing, and I pulled it up here, there's like anywhere from 130 to 160 square feet of retail space. There's 50,000 square feet of office space, which I can't think is good for Pease, by the way, to have a brand new thing right across the highway. And I think there's some concern that that's gonna eat into the downtown retail scene, because it's obviously gonna be much cheaper rents out there. And just, have you seen these sort of developments happen, and how does it impact more historical areas in the communities these have happened at?
I haven't seen too much their attraction over there is gonna be like your more chain-like retail versus what you would see in like the downtown.
Yeah.
At least that's their goal. I don't
If
anticipate
you
it
look
being
at-
that much cheaper after they're done constructing, cause that's gonna be a very large scale project.
Well, speaking to like the development market in Maine over in Bedford, it's mostly retail. It was supposed to have an office component that they have now done away with. They're not doing it anymore. And that could happen here too. Tuscan Village has more of the medical office that they put up, which is being more that side of the state. Fantastic. I love the Boston medical coming up into that area. But the flex space, they're trying to do the life science there as well. And it's just not happening right now. It's still on the market that they might do it. Woodmont is another one, and now they have the industrial component. They have a lot of the multifamily and 55 over community there too. The thing for like market in Maine and Bedford, it's pulling from downtown, but it's just makes downtown not as busy, and it's actually enjoyable. I know Manchester in particular has done a lot about getting more people into the city with some of the concerts and events they've had down there. Snow Arena's doing well again. So it's different. I don't think it's gonna take away from downtown. It just might spread out your area, so everything in between seems to be doing better. Manchester in particular, so is everyone here kind of familiar with Market in Maine and Bedford, which is like the nicest retail development other than Tuscan?
No.
So when you're going off of 293, so downtown Manchester's here and Market in Maine's here in Bedford, and obviously Bedford has, like Abby said, more of the chain names, but it's the higher end, which has been nice, and you don't have that downtown. Downtown, we have more of the family businesses, but people are now going to both, which is nice. So it could help it, but at the same time, for the housing side of it, I don't know what it's gonna do to your housing, because you guys have so much housing being added. But a lot's gonna hit, or not a lot, some's gonna hit in 2025, 2026, and 2027. So, like I said, it's gonna skew the vacancy really quick. The rental rates is gonna be just based on the construction cost too, because if we're building a year later and construction costs keep going up, it might be more expensive to backfill those, but that's gonna be on the investors and what they want to do, if they are trying to fill them or not. I know Manchester is now doing a lot of deals on a lot of their spaces to fill them. They're making deals, but once you lock them in, that's a whole other story. And parking is a whole other issue. $150 for our parking spaces in my building. Come on.
Different. In the market in Maine, it was a former Macy's anchored shopping plaza redevelopment, so they had a lot of density and it's Whole Foods anchored and there's a Trader Joe's.
And Trader
So it's
Joe's.
very
REI.
I know that, yeah.
Yeah, and they've done really good with the restaurants they put in, like Tavern in the Square just opened, and what a lot of people thought is that Copper Door was gonna get hurt by Tavern opening, and they're both just packed.
Yeah, they help.
But downtown is also packed, because they have a bunch of new restaurants that have opened, so
It's gonna drive more interest to the area
I think
overall.
it's just bringing more people back into the city, instead of going, oh, I don't wanna go downtown, there'll be nothing available, well, let me go here.
Or they may go there instead of Rochester if there's a different option that might be.
Exactly. Hopefully that helps.
Anybody else have one final question or one thing to wrap up? One thing, this isn't a question, but it's a comment, it's so hard to figure out why they're successful. Christy mentioned conversion buildings, and then the question was asked, is that conversion to housing? It's so hard to answer the question of why that's happening, like in Manchester at a certain rate, and it's not happening in Portsmouth at a certain rate, when cost of labor is the same, cost of construction materials are the same, and obviously the landlords are different and the willingness to do that is different, but there are things that the bar graphs don't explain. But it's just a comment. Things that Christy and I talk about. Anyone else with a last question or?
My last question to the group, was there anything we didn't cover that you guys are interested? I try to listen to what you guys say the year before and add it in, but was this, I know it doesn't focus on the downtown as
I
much.
think the one thing that would help is you voice over the vacancy rate, or sorry, the new units being added on those timelines. If there was some sort of an indicator across the top, like number of units or
Yeah.
something like that, that could align those trends to the stock that's available.
Can I add that in and just send it back to you? so you can
Please.
distribute? Okay.
Definitely. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you.
Thanks, Christie.
You ever take that?
So we'll move on to the discussion of goals for the 2026 planning workshop. And planning workshop is the next time we're all going to see each other. Kind of wanted to lay out the calendar again, even though we all have it, because with this planning meeting being on the 30th, it's only 1 week before our next meeting, which is on February 6th. The goal is to take the findings and summaries and working groups that the planning workshop develops, package that, put it in a report and get it out before the February 6th meeting. So that's the timeline. We're meeting at the Levinson Room, the City of Portsmouth Library. It's between, it starts at 1 and we'll be going to 4:30. Lori Waltz is the Executive Director of Leadership Seacoast, and she's been secured to facilitate the planning workshop, which is going to be great. Annually, Leadership Seacoast accepts a group of established and emerging leaders to participate in community leadership program and training. I know Abby Bachman has been through the program. I know Sean knows Lori. There may be other folks, that know Lori and have worked with her before. She's a Portsmouth resident. She's dedicated to community engagement. Really grateful that she's willing to come on board with this important workshop. I think it's gonna be great to have independent mind come in and lead this group. let's see, moving on from that. So one of the main goals of the workshop is to form our initial 2026 working groups. There are no working groups right now, active working groups in the commission now. Lori has access to our commissioner questionnaires. That will be one of her starting points to get ramped up on how to approach the planning workshop on the 30th. And then Lori and I together are going to work on that packaging in the quick 1 week between the 30th and February 6th. That way we can actually take advantage of that meeting in February and not lose a month. Just because it's a short amount of time. So I'm kind of going over that, sounds redundant, but we did change this meeting date and we did push off the planning workshop to the 30th. So that's just why I'm mentioning it again, so we're not feeling lost that. So with that, I'm going to turn the next section over to Ben for the Chamber Collaborative update.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just a few updates to share. As far as our work, we had a successful Vintage Christmas. From what I heard from retailers downtown and the partners of Vintage Christmas is that things were good. I don't think anyone broke records, but people seemed pretty happy, and some folks just said we're going to choose to be positive and felt good about the year. So that was good to hear. But I think overall people had a pretty good experience. We had a great business after hours last night at Portsmouth Music and Arts Center. Sean was there. Great to see a lot of people and kind of kick off the new year. We do kind of have a West End theme going, so we were at PMAC last night. We have a new West End networking group that we're putting together called Hello West End. That will be it'll be a quarterly thing for now. Our first meeting will be on the 21st, also at PMAC. They were gracious enough to host us. We have a networking event next Friday morning at NB2 Restore. Right in front of PMAC. It's kind of a theme. A couple other things coming up. We do have our elected officials reception on the 27th. At the end of the day, 5 to 7 p.m. I'll be at Great Bay Community College. So if you're interested in connecting with local city councilors and state representatives and all that sort of stuff, you can join us there. We have somebody coming from the statewide chamber to talk about policy concerns, and then we'll also hear from Assistant Mayor Joanna Kelly and our State Senator Rebecca Perkins-Quilka. And then we have our tourism summit the very next morning. So if you want to connect with the hospitality industry, join us at the tourism summit on the 28th. Be at Seacoast Rep Theater. And then the last thing I'll share is coming up early in February. On the 4th of February is our annual Celebrate Her conference where we celebrate our women business leaders. I will share that those nominations have been sifted through. We selected our winners just yesterday, and although they're not public, I would encourage folks from this group to attend. There might be somebody sitting around this table that is recognized at that event. So it would be great to see you all there. So that is the 4th. It's a lunch. So that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Ben. Our next agenda item is going to be a quick one. I think the city council update. So our mayor has not assigned yet our 2 councilor liaisons. So happy to meet Michelle here this morning, but as there hasn't been a meeting, we're not going to ask for a update on that. So the update is stay tuned for February.
It is hoped that at the January 20th meeting of the council, which is their next meeting, that there will be appointments announced. If not, there's some peer pressure right now because I'm saying it.
On Caption TV.
Right.
And the next item also looks pretty light. Public comment. Usually we invite members of the public that are at the meeting to come forward and comment. And it looks like we just have Michelle here right now. So no one else. So
If you want a very brief master plan.
Yes, please.
that would be great.
I had a call this week. I actually haven't had calls for a while because they've been heads down, so I've been not on tap for them, well, untapped but not tapped. But this week I did have a call and I asked them about the document that the EDC sent on to them and did they need more, what was that looking like? And the quote is that the EDC is very aligned with the direction UTL is going. So they thought the document was great. They did not see anything that wasn't in the same vein as what they're already working on in their draft. There'll be a survey, a new online survey coming out, and I'm not sure when.
I haven't been to a meeting.
Soon-ish, I would say in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But the next big milestone is gonna be a community meeting in April. I don't have a date, but it'll be at the community campus and the gym. Expecting a big crowd for that one as it's a kind of a big of where they are now. So I think that is they're also putting together some focus groups, no dates, but I can tell you they're gonna be looking for input on retail. I think, Wendy, you've been looped in a little bit on that with the UTL people.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything further.
Just that they wanna do it, there's no dates.
So we show retail and hospitality.
Hospitality, service
Great, yeah.
industry, vulnerable populations. They're going to establish a connection with Good Work to kind of reach some of the populations there, arts and culture, and school-age kids in an effort to reach the families of school-age kids. So it's kind of a twofer theirs. They have had they had some major input from third graders and fifth graders at New Franklin School. They took the survey and it was pretty epic, about 60 kids.
Would love to see those results.
I actually pulled those results off of the spreadsheet and made a separate spreadsheet, so like they are shareable, they're anonymous, and they're pretty great, things that people wrote, some very heartfelt comments, and also things like we need more animal shelters and we need more boats, and there was just some really great stuff. I can pull that out and send that around. But that's where they are, so they're still kind of heads down on their drafts. There's an expectation that a couple of commissions and committees are gonna have a draft to look at for edits, but it will all go to the planning board first. So planning board is they're the in-charge folks on this one, so we won't see anything before the planning board does.
Right.
But anyway, thank you from them for the good work you did on your document.
The notion was it made it into the draft we wanted it to make it into, and
Correct.
kind of past that, yeah, and I think
They've all read it because they have been heads down working on this what they're gonna present in
Right.
April. And she kind of said there weren't any surprises in what you sent, what you put together. It was very aligned with things that they've already uncovered. So it's all kind of been incorporated.
So knowing this has to go to the planning board first and they're presenting some form of it in April, is it possible for us to maybe put a placeholder in the March meeting agenda to see what's available?
I had
Have somebody-
asked them if we'd see something for our February meeting, and she said absolutely not.
But
So
March
yes,
should be
March. I would say March maybe.
Okay, check that.
And I don't know when it could be end of April for the community meeting, which would also put the April meeting as the backup plan.
We've been relying heavily on you, Anne, for keeping us on this. I hope we can just kind of keep being nimble and responding quickly, and I feel good that document made it into the right draft number kind of thing, and
The other interested
recognized it.
committee is the Sustainability Committee. They've been very interested in having a look at the draft too, and UTL is aware of that and trying to get it to our two groups.
So I agree with Sarah. We'll make sure that
Yeah, pencil it in for March.
and then if it needs to slide to April, we can do that as well. I want to kind of try to keep up with UTL and the good work that they're doing there. So our next meeting is February 6th, as mentioned, and I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just one thing I wanted to bring up. I keep forgetting to do this, but I've gotten some feedback recently from area businesses in the West End, and maybe you've heard some comments about this, but the phone service in the West End is terrible. So I don't know, I don't
Cellular?
know if we've heard anything about.
If it's Verizon, that's a known issue, like Verizon does not have good coverage even in my neighborhood either.
T-Mobile.
I have T-Mobile.
But but the West End, there seems to be this area that just has
dead
bad
zones.
service. And I don't know if there's anything on the horizon about a new tower or anything like that, but particularly with all the new businesses popping up down there, might be more of an issue. I don't know.
Just the cable committee, the cable commission.
Somebody was like,
They've got a meeting coming up.
Yeah,
I can check in.
so I should go to that.
That would be helpful. It's a
Okay.
public meeting.
I remember with our retreat or with our workshop last year, some basic issues like infrastructure and
Critical infrastructure,
Critical
wireless
infrastructure.
support, that's part of one of our master plan inputs to make sure that we've got all of that in place for the city.
if,
Well, that's an issue.
we can fold that back in, and that's even more specific, which is great. It's specific neighborhood. I'll make note of that, and we can bring that back up, and maybe that ends up being an agenda item for one of the working groups that's formed. But I don't know if there were any other comments, but I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. And the motion carries. Adjourned.